here we can see the San Mazzanos. These are excellent for producing passata, or sometimes known as paste tomatoes. I'm hoping these are going to grow, I really am, and we're not going to get blight. I'm looking for cures for blight. We can no longer use Bordeaux mixture, it's been banned. Great shame. It did have the habit of turning everything a bright turquoise colour, which was the copper sulphate that was in it. It's quite disturbing, but it was very effective, all the same, of reducing the chances of blight and indeed preventing it in many instances. We move down the line, we've got Black Moon, beefsteak tomato, and then a line here under the membrane where the pipe is, you can see there. Just take it down ground level, and you can see there it's just weeping very gradually. Now these are a bush tomato. I'm hoping that I can get a good enough harvest to dry and then preserve over the winter period. Fingers crossed. The bed on the right here is a mixture of carrot and beetroot. The beetroot is beginning to come through. I'll just swivel round and have a look. Here's the beetroot growing here. Seedling stage, it's quite a way behind. I've had some difficulty getting it started because of the dry weather. And I am watering, but water is quite difficult to obtain on this site. There's no mains water supply. I have to gather it and store it in big tanks. Further down this row here, and again struggling because of the very dry weather, we've got carrot, although I can see one or two beginning to come through, against all odds, I'm afraid, but we'll see. There's one just in the shadow of the camera here, actually, just here where my grubby little finger is. Now, a quick word about potatoes. Behind this shambolic mess are 30-litre pots of potatoes. There are some larger containers, but I've chosen to grow about 6 or 7 varieties of potato in these pots this year because they do fare better than those that are in the ground, particularly the early varieties. But why the mess? Why all the grass? Why are they growing in amongst all the grass? Yeah, there's an element of laziness, I'll concede that point. However, pots tend to dry out, and by having this long grass around them, it doesn't harm them. It's not coming up into the containers themselves, but what it does do is keep the heat of the sun off the sides of the containers. Hot roots slows the roots down. These varieties here, you can see, are looking quite good, quite glossy green, and there you can see where I've trampled the grass down to get in and water them yesterday. I put on something like 5 to 10 litres, 5 litres I think it was, on each of the containers, and we've got obviously a mixture of earlies, mid-season and lates. The lates, again, hope they're going to avoid the blight. The earlies certainly will, and we'll see how they go. But I just wanted to show you this. This is my attempt to conserve water, because obviously the heat isn't getting onto the containers and causing the water to evaporate, and also to provide that essential shade to the sides of the pots. We'll see how it goes. Yes, okay, purists, it's a mess, but I know it works. And in there is probably about, let's think, I would imagine probably 70 or 80 kilos of potatoes in all these pots together. We'll be measuring them towards the start of the season, which the earlies will be coming out in late July at this rate. I just need to go and have a look at my bees. Last night, late yesterday afternoon, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I noticed a swarm turned up. It's not my bees swarming, but it was a large swarm, and I just want to make sure that it's settled down into the box that I've put it in. But just looking around here, you can see how much more the grass and the flowers are coming on now. And now we're getting into summer. The yellow rattle, which I've commented on all the time, is starting to come into bloom now. And I'll just crouch down here and you can have a look at this. There it is. Semi-parasitic plant, feeds off the roots of other grasses and herbaceous plants. Absolutely fantastic. One of my favourite plants. And there is a lot of it throughout this area. And let me just crouch down here. There we go. And this red bit here waving in front of the camera, which you can't quite see, this is sheep sorrel, edible apparently. And there we are. Wonderful, wonderful yellow rattle. Here we are. Now these little beauties look as though they're going to stay with me. I was a little bit worried last night because they were very fidgety. If you're a beekeeper, you probably know what I mean. They went into the hive, they were doing all the right things, fanning to say this is new home, but they were just extremely buzzy. And I thought, well, this is a large swarm. It was indeed a large swarm. No photographs because it was so late on in the afternoon that I just wanted to get it boxed before it decided to go somewhere else. So I did it straight away without taking any pictures. Anyway, to my delight this morning, they're still here. As you can see, very active. They are actually beginning to clean the hive out. There's an old hive with some old comb in it. And just in the bottom left, you'll see that there's a lot of point to it without getting stung. There's an awful lot of debris just down here, which is they're pulling out the old comb and they'll be preparing it for the queen to lay. So there we go. One new swarm, the apiary. Good luck, girls. I'll do my best to look after you, my little beauties. Oh yes. Isn't it wonderful? I love my bees. Oh, the runner beans are beginning to climb. Look at that nice anti-clockwise around the pole, the bamboo cane that is, and off it will go. That one hopefully will find its way. As soon as these touch anything, they'll wrap round. You can encourage them if they wish to be encouraged by just doing that, and that will hopefully stay there and whistle its way up the pole. Fantastic. These are looking quite healthy. I mean, the ground looks pretty rubbish here, but they're sat on top of clay, so there's still plenty of moisture in this ground despite this very dry weather. And these will certainly shoot up to the tops of these poles, which is going to be 6 feet. This is White Lady, by the way. White Lady. I might even at some point put a dressing of compost around there just to hold the moisture in, but at the moment they're holding their own and looking very healthy indeed. A little bit of feed when they were put in. They don't need it because they're nitrogen fixers, but I always do believe in giving them a decent start before they've even got to that stage of the nodules developing on the roots, and it helps them and gives them a good boost. So there we are, White Lady runner beans. I just wanted to have a walk through the trees, just to allow you to have a look. Yes, a tree is a tree is a tree, but we're now approaching midsummer and the grasses are beginning to be quite lush despite the fact it's been so dry. The trees, the apple trees, have finished with the blossom, and now they have set, have a look here, see the small apples beginning to swell on the ends of the branches. I've no idea what variety this is, to be quite honest. I'm in the middle of the orchard and haven't really taken a reference as to where I am, so I'd be guessing. But there we go. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, we've got at least 4 apples this year. That's a start. We swing round. We can just take a look at this glorious view. Beautiful blue sky. Very little wind today. Temperature about 19 degrees it was forecast. Haven't a clue. But it's just so peaceful. Anyway, back to work. Now, just a very brief word about water. I have immediate at hand 5 of what we call IBCs, intermediate bulk containers. Each of these holds 1,000 litres of water. All this water comes off the surrounding buildings and is stored over a period of time as it rains. Obviously, the ones that are here have to be pumped. I pump out of the lower ones into the higher one, and the ones that are higher ones there we go. These are gravity fed off the roof. Very fortunate these 3 containers here are below the discharge level of the roof, so simple connection with pipes brings water into here. Now, just a word about these IBCs. They're very readily available and available second hand, brand new and second hand. Brand new, by the time you've had it delivered, is going to cost you about the best part of £150 to £200 depending on where you shop. All these are second hand or surplus to requirements. This white one here on the left was used for molasses on a farm. It was 35 quid delivered. The 4 black ones here were brand new, and I was very fortunate to get these through a company that was changing its working practices and wanted to get them out of the way basically. And I think I paid £50 each for these. So £200 for 4,000 litre containers, 4,000 litres of storage I should say. Not bad considering there's no water or electricity on this site. So when I say pump, how do I pump it? That's all done through solar, and I'll show you all that in a later video. While we're around the back here, this is the more disgraceful part of the setup. It's the scruffy bit. 3 compost bins. We'll be talking about compost as we go through the season. These are fairly big bins. They are over a cubic metre a piece, and here we go. And everything off the land goes into here, and this includes the waste material from when I'm making apple juice and cider to any green waste that comes off, including grass clippings when I do a bit of trimming. And here's a bin that is been emptied. So the routine here will be very simply fill the bin, allow it to sit for the best part of a year, turn it over and put it in the next bin. That will sit for a year. So this whole process takes about 2 years. It will rot down and that can go straight on the land. And this bin here, which is half full, it was partially emptied earlier in the season, has become a bit overgrown. I've got a volunteer potato there, which I'm going to leave. I don't need this material at the moment, but this is the material that's going to come out. Mixture of soils off the land and also rotted vegetation. Very rich in minerals, and I need to get it, dig down there. There we go. Look at that. The white on the top there is some lime that I spread just to help reduce the pH, but it is extremely good material. If you've got the space, do it. Don't waste anything. Kitchen scraps, no cooked waste in these. Not a good idea. It does encourage vermin, although I will openly admit that this one here became a home for rats, unfortunately, and yes, they were lawfully dispatched because they were becoming a nuisance and doing a lot of damage. So no vermin at the moment. That's a quick introduction to composting on the site. Do try to recycle all green material, brown material that's surplus to requirement. We do have chickens elsewhere, and some of the waste straw goes in there. In fact, here's some of it. That all goes in and will rot down and be spread on the land and build up the humus content. And back to my volunteer potato. No idea what it is. I'm sure it'll be edible. It's certainly growing in some good compound. And there's another little job to do. There's always something that gets in the way of doing something else, isn't there? This tap is leaking and needs changing, so we'll just whistle it off. The IBC. Oh, and yes, look at that. Let me get rid of that. Hang on to that. It's useful. This is split just along there. Can you see that? I'm wondering whether or not you can see it. That's frost action. And also, look at that. About had it, hasn't it? I've got a new one here. Now, the key to survival with these, take them off in the winter time. That's what I suggest you do, and put them somewhere dry. Make sure they're drained so you don't get frost or ice build up in them, which has probably caused that to crack. And we'll just wind this on. Now, I will also, there we go, that should do. It's also important never to over tighten this rubber seal here. If you do that, then you're back to square one with a leak if you crush it too much, but that's sitting rather nicely square. And this is Durham Early, a lovely little cabbage. Put in about a month ago or thereabouts. Again, a bit behind time due to the weather, the dry weather. I have been watering them as best as I can. And it looks as though I'm going to have to do some weeding shortly before this takes over, but it's a fairly quick job on this dry ground. And over here I've got dwarf curly kale. I'm just trying to pronounce that carefully because I stumble over my words. It's a very good kale. It's not one of the excessive growers. It doesn't grow to about 3 or 4 feet high. And I think you've got to walk. It's quite prolific in the shops, this dwarf green kale. Problem with it is that it's not truly frost hardy like the traditional kales. And I've got seedling kale to plant out shortly, traditional kale as I call the winter hardy varieties. But I grow these, and we tend to grow an awful lot of kale because we share it between ourselves and the chickens. And particularly the winter variety is a good source of food for the chickens in the winter if we've got plenty in the ground. Moving a little further down this bed, here we've got, what have we got here? We've got broccoli and also a few kale, and interplanted between it lettuce. Makes use of space, that's what I say. These kale will grow. These are the taller varieties, the winter kales. So I can't remember the variety of this one. It'll come to me. Nonetheless, it's one of the hardier kales which will go through the winter. And we get down to the bottom here, and there's calabrese interspersed with red lettuce, delicious red lettuce. And towards the end here, probably a big mistake here putting these cost-type lettuce outside. I find these demand an awful lot of water. They also here at certain parts of the day it's exposed to quite hard sunshine, and no, they need cosseting to get a good heart on these. But nobody will ever stop me growing lettuce. I just love growing lettuce. And very finally over here to my right, I just pull it in. These are the Cavallonero, the black kales, and there are 20 odd plants here to get me through the winter. Yes, I like my greens, and why not? They've got a lot of growing to do, but as I mentioned earlier on, down the middle here I've sown some white Lisbon spring onion. It was old seed, it was going to go in the bin, it was well out of date, and I thought, well, just put it in, see what happens. And it's struggling, I suspect, not because it's old, but more because it's so dry. The last oh, since the 12th of May, and we're now the 5th of June, since the 12th of May we've had 2 millimetres of rain. That's quite astonishing. But that's a quick look at this veg patch. I mentioned earlier on about interplanting. What we've got here in between these Brussels sprouts, oh, a little frog will produce there. Let's get rid of that. We don't want that. There we go. Don't want any nibbles on my brassicas. What we've got here is cherry bell, a radish. Now these are beginning to bolt. It's pretty obvious. Look at that. And when they bolt, they go woody. You've only got a certain amount of time from then to harvest these roots. When they start to bolt like this, that's wanting to send a flower shoot up. You get this tough stem here. That tough stem goes straight down into the root, and they become quite inedible. So I've got to go through these and pull out what I can save. Not those. There'll be some good ones left. That's a corker. Look at that. That's quite nice. There's still some picking to be done here, but this was a row of about 20-30 feet long. Offers some shade. Now the reason for bolting is multifold, to be honest, but it hasn't helped with the dry weather. That does tend to force them a little. Radishes like to be grown fast, in my experience, so they require plenty of water to get them on. I mean, you can turn these around, to be quite truthful, in as much as 4 or 5 weeks or less in a good year, but they need quite a little bit of support. I mean, I'm not trying to put anybody off. They grow as easy as anything. They grow like twitch grass. They grow very easily and very readily. But slugs, oh, there's some slug damage. Let's see if I can show you that. Slugs love them. This one's no use at all, but you can see those little kisses. Let's see if I can bring that into focus. Can you see that? Can you see those little scars there? I call them kisses. I mean, that, if it was any use, it's not bolting, but if that was any use, it's perfectly edible. It's what I call a slug kiss. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Don't chuck it away. Eat it. But where was I? Yes, they provide cover, shelter for any plants that you're growing on the outside, and these will need taking out. And they're a cheap crop to grow. I mean, the seed is extremely cheap, and it's worth planting them, if anything, because one thing you can do at the end of it is you've got some half decent compost. Let's just have a look at that radish there. Let's just cut that. Now I'll take the bolting top off it. There we go. Oh, I've torn that. Now, I'm not trying to peel it, my knife is actually blunt. And oh, that's good. That's still good. Still good to eat. Slight pepperiness to it. My goodness. I can't even show you this kind of treat. Never speak with your mouth full. I will. That's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. So there's still some radish there to be saved. Keep it on rotation. The bed behind me here has dwarf kidney beans, and I think whether I can pull that into shot or not. There's one just here. I'll put my finger on it. There we go, one starting to appear there. 2 rows down here, about 20 feet long each, and down the middle again radish, in this instance a different variety. Just trying to think what it's called. It always escapes you when you want to tell somebody something. Oh, it's an age thing, not to worry. And radish down the middle again. Anyway, I hope that is somewhat entertaining. This is worth looking at. Look at this here. Now, I've got bird netting over here, but nevertheless, you always find that if they want to get in, they do. This is not insect damage, this is bird damage. And what they do is they pull the netting down, and the cheeky devils tear off the brassicas. Now, it's not going to affect it, the growing point hasn't been damaged, so this will grow out of that. Look at this one here. Look at that. Shredded. But thankfully the growing point there is still good, and they'll eventually take over and they'll bush out and grow over. these are going to be very vulnerable. These Brussels will be very vulnerable, and I'm thinking of constructing some sort of cage over the top to protect them. Again, more netting. The wood pigeons around here absolutely love me. I am the purveyor of all good greens. Well, it's some sort of notoriety, I suppose. It doesn't suit me too often, blessed things. I like to see them. I mean, they're actually quite amusing birds, but my God, do they do some damage. So, there we are. Just pull this to an end now. I just wanted to finish by saying thank you if you've had the patience to wade all the way through this. There might be some snippets of useful information in it, and at the worst it shows my endeavours and my struggles. I've been struggling today with sorting bees out, so I'm a very tired, dehydrated, sweaty ball at the moment. Now there's a vision to conjure up. But I just want to finish by saying that over the next couple of weeks, what I shall be doing is putting together a microgreen session, and I'll try and put that as one video from start to finish, so it's going to take about 3 weeks to film altogether. But here's wishing you all the best. Any questions you've got, just bang them down in the comments and I'll do my best to sort it out for you, or at least enter it. I can't sort your garden out, but I can probably sort out your questions. And thanks for having the patience to go through this video if you've got this far. All the best for now. Thanks very much.